What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying the start of your weekend. Familiar background for me, a little less scenic, but I drove home yesterday from training camp. Nice little 7-hour drive. As excited I was to go, spend 3 days in Latrobe. Enjoyed myself very much. I was excited to get back home and sleep in my own bed for the first time in several nights. But we had a lighter day of practice yesterday. We did not see the Steelers put on the pads, which is not overly surprising given how physical and intense the Friday Night Lights practice was. But there's still a decent amount of takeaways to be had from yesterday's practice. We had some elements that they were practicing in as well. There was rain pretty much on and off throughout practice. But I did want to get on here and even without pads, give you guys some of my quick takeaways, not just from yesterday's practice, but focus a little bit more on things that I saw just over the course of 3 days. But just before we get started, if y'all could just make sure you like, subscribe, drop me a comment. All that stuff is greatly appreciated, helps the channel grow. And then if you're looking for Steelers gear, look, we are like 5 days away, man, from the first preseason game. If you're looking for Steelers gear, make sure to check out Homage, link in the description. Get some gear before the preseason kicks off. But really, yesterday I felt like the defense really fought back a little bit. I thought the offense, like with the pads on Friday night, I thought that they pretty much did what they wanted to do in terms of moving the ball up and down the field, punching the ball in the end zone. They won 7 shots, basically 7-0. But yesterday I think the defense won 5-2. We saw some good things though from the first team offense in particular. The connection between Justin Fields and George Pickens. Fields found Pickens in a little bit of a scramble drill, looked left, kind of rolled to his right, and then Pickens was kind of working into his vision across the back line of the end zone. And then another thing, like kind of a familiar theme really throughout the week, they had Pickens aligned in a bunch formation, but this time he was at the point. Basically, they had him run kind of up towards the goalpost, getting matched up on a linebacker and field hitting for another score. And really, the overarching takeaway for me is just continuing the theme of Pickens' usage and his route tree looks completely different than what we've seen over the past 2 years. He's probably caught more passes like in between the hashes or in between the numbers, at least in training camp these past 3 days, than he might have like for the majority of the season last year. I mean, that's how much different, his utilization looks so far. And I just think that in talking with the other guys, the beat writers and guys that have been there every single day since camp opened, I think that you just have seen Justin and George's connection just kind of continuously ramp up throughout camp. And I think that's probably just a result of them taking a ton of reps together. I mean, Justin's handled a good amount, a good hefty workload, to be honest with you. He threw a ton of passes on Friday Night Lights. And then yesterday as well, with Russ still being limited, he got pretty much all the first team reps as well. We did see Broderick Jones, I think, take a snap or two at left tackle yesterday, so that was something to kind of note. Like we've kind of talked about on the channel, Broderick's been playing almost exclusively right tackle. Very minimal snaps for him over on the left side. I did think that Dan Moore Jr. had some encouraging moments yesterday in the team run period. Of course, there's no pads, so like I tell you guys all the time, not really going to take too much away from that, but he did have some really nice reps on like mid zone. He was able to push the edge defender out, create a big run. I know him and I believe it was Mason McCormick because Sam Allo had the day off. A lot of guys didn't practice yesterday too. That's another thing. A lot of guys were either really limited, not just beyond Russ, but like TJ, Cam, Minka, those guys didn't really participate in 11 on 11. So a lot of vet days off in that regard, but as well as the normal kind of injury bumps and bruises type stuff. Patrick Queen didn't practice, but he told me he's good, so don't freak out over the injury stuff with PQ. But I thought Dan Moore had some solid moments yesterday, but overall, the edge rushers looked pretty good. I mean, this is a really talented edge group. I know I talked about how Marcus Golden looks like he hasn't really missed a rep, a step, anything like that. He looks really ready to go. Nick Herbig really impressed me over the course of the 3 days that I was there, just with his explosiveness, seeing him get off the ball. It seems like in talking with Golden, we got to talk to Golden and Highsmith yesterday before practice, and both those guys really had nothing but great things to say about Nick, the way that he prepares. Marcus was sharing with us that even he told Nick Herbig last year, like, dude, you're not a normal rookie, and I think that's some encouraging signs of development there too, just because Golden's a guy who has been, a number one pass rusher for teams in the past, but he's had a really long career as a really strong and steady player. And for a vet like that to be showering praise on a rookie kind of unprompted in that type of setting is definitely notable, in my opinion. And I also think like DeMarvin Leal was another guy that I kind of wanted to note. I've talked a little bit about Leal over the course of the spring and the summer, kind of talked about, this is kind of a make or break season for him. I think with the kind of the lack of involvement or the lack of progression for him over last season, I think kind of put him a little bit maybe on like the roster bubble in terms of, he's definitely not a lock to make this roster, even despite just being a third round pick 2 years ago. He's playing a lot at edge because they've got a lot of injuries right now. Like I said, TJ didn't really practice yesterday. He's not hurt, but other guys like Jeremiah Moon missed his second or third straight practice. David Perales was released with a knee injury. So they've got some things that they're working through out there. So he's been getting some snaps out there. That's not really where I want to see him play, long term, just because like I think like if it's gonna work, especially if he's gonna take, a rotational role as early as this year, I think it needs to be on the interior. My biggest takeaway from him is like he just looks a little bit more explosive and a little bit more confident in terms of like knowing how to throw his moves, and then just even beyond that, I kind of like the chippiness that I've seen from him. Just like even like after plays and stuff, it seems like he's really engaged, like kind of giving guys a little bit of extra nudge. He just seems like he's playing with a little bit more of an edge than I saw, really at all through the first two seasons. I couldn't tell you what it looked like last year at training camp because I didn't get out there for a couple of days like I had this year 2 years ago, but I think that it's at least encouraging. He's a guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Once preseason kind of starts to see where he's at. They did this kind of cool one-on-one tackling drill. I want to kind of touch on some of my overall thoughts on that as well. So I think they normally do this drill. I call it a hallway drill because that's what we called it in high school. But it's just like a one-on-one tackling drill, but no pass. They were kind of just doing like two-hand touch. Calvin Austin looked untouchable in this rep. Like his kind of joystick like movements were giving guys a lot of problems. Him and Beanie Bishop matched up a couple times. He got Beanie pretty good with some nice moves. They even had Justin Fields going through it with Peyton Wilson. So two pretty crazy athletes for the positions that they play. Ryan Watts. So over the course of the 3 days that I was there, Ryan Watts was getting a good amount of praise from Mike Tomlin. Like that was just something that I noticed, not just on defense, but on special teams. He's been pretty heavily involved. I know over the first week of the training camp session, he was working a lot as a down backer. He continued to work as that, just not as much like with the first team. But Mike Tomlin's been giving him some good coaching, being really vocal with him, giving him praise when he does good, and vice versa. It's just something to note. We got to talk with Ryan a little bit before practice yesterday about like his transition. Like he's pretty much a safety now. Like he's kind of honestly playing the role that I sort of galaxy brain envisioned him playing, where he's like kind of this down backer guy that's going to match up with guys in the slot, potentially take on some big tight ends and passing situations. And he talked about his transition and he said it's going pretty smooth, and he looks pretty comfortable out there, to be honest with you. He had an interception a couple nights ago, I think in the scrimmage period on Friday Night Lights. So I think the arrow is kind of up for him. We'll see if he can crack the roster. Training preseason obviously going to kind of be a defining moment for him. But same thing with kind of Corey Trice in terms of like the downbacker usage. I tweeted this out yesterday on my way home, but I think if the Steelers had their way in a perfect situation, everything goes right, I think they would have Corey Trice as their downbacker this year, in addition to him being the team's top backup on the boundary. It just seems like that's the direction that we're trending. I mean, there were some guys that sat out yesterday, but even over the course of the 3 days that I was there, his participation continually ramped up with that, which I think was by plan. They're being really careful with him coming off that major injury last year. And another thing too, everyone that I talked to there, from the beat writers to some guys, some other players as well, like continually reference just how good he was last camp. Like I don't want to understate that. Like he was trending really strong last year before he got hurt. And that's probably why the Steelers are, giving him every opportunity to earn not just a roster spot, but potentially some playing time. So that's kind of my thing right now. I think that the depth at corner behind the starters was something that I wasn't like overly impressed by, just because, well, 2 of the 3 days I was there, they didn't have pads on. So that is a major advantage to the wide receivers. But I thought the receiver groups and one-on-ones and even like 7-on-7 did a pretty good job getting open. Um, but Trice's continued development would be a very positive thing for Pittsburgh's defense. Speaking of cornerbacks, maybe former cornerbacks. I don't know. Cam Sutton been playing like exclusively safety the past couple days. Not really sure what that's about. But Minka, he didn't practice full yesterday. He said that Mike Tomlin was trying to save him from himself, just trying to conserve his energy, conserve his snaps, that wear and tear on his body. But Sutton getting some reps at safety, so that's kind of interesting. Of course, he's suspended for the first half of the season, but I think it's never that's probably one of the more intriguing qualities of Cam is his football IQ allows him to, he obviously knows the defense extremely well, but even when he was here before, they had the ability to kind of rotate some coverages and play him deep because he's a guy that knows everybody's assignment, really heady football player, knows where to be, always seems to be in the right spot. And that's really the story on him dating back to his days coming out of college at Tennessee. But he's getting a lot of safety work. We'll see. I don't think like a position switch or anything like that's coming, but I do think they're just kind of preparing for injuries, anything that could potentially happen. And then his kind of quote unquote like replacement in the slot, at least for the first half of the season, potentially is going to be Beanie Bishop. Bishop has really impressed me with his special teams involvement, even in the non-tackling periods. He just seems like always around the ball. So he's been, playing some like kickoff. He's been playing some kick return. We've seen him doing a lot of gunner work. I noted in my Friday Night Lights takeaways on Steelers now that him and Cam Sutton were basically undefeated last night in the gunner drill. They did a really good job keeping their guy far away from the punt returner. He drew a lot of praise, not just from Danny Smith, but also from Mike Tomlin during that drill as well. And it's just kind of, when a guy like that's running with the first team defense, and then he's also contributing on special teams, I think the arrow is like pointing straight up, not just in terms of him getting a roster spot, but a heavy contributor, somebody that's going to play a decent amount of snaps. But he had a splash play yesterday. He ended up like I think maybe the first play of team period. They were trying to run a little bit of a flare screen from the slot. He ended up jumping the snap, read it perfectly, and ended up picking off Fields, taking it back to for a touchdown. But kind of some other stuff I wanted to mention, just because I know like you guys are going to want to know about the quarterback situation. I thought Justin he was a decent amount better than he was the first day I was there, which was Thursday. He wasn't as good maybe as he was during Friday Night Lights, but he was still like super, he was efficient. Like he was good yesterday. I think particularly in the red zone, just understanding, when the ball needs to come out. I thought he was mostly accurate. Had a couple really nice highlight worthy throws. I think the best one was probably to Van Jefferson on a corner route for about like 25 yards down the left side of the field. I thought that the defense did a better job of keeping the lid on things yesterday in terms of like forcing him to check the ball down. There wasn't, I think one other thing that I wanted to note was that Darnell Washington, he's getting more targets. And I thought for the first 2 days of camp, I thought that he was, kind of a winner. I thought that yesterday was a little bit of a rough day for him. There were a couple different times where I thought he had an opportunity to make catches, but wasn't able to secure it. They had kind of a broken play in 7 shots where they ended up tossing him the ball up on basically towards the back pylon of the left end zone. And it was just a jump ball between him and Anthony Everett, who I thought had a pretty good day. And he ended up losing that rep. Everett ended up like high pointing the football, knocking the ball away from him. And then later in team period, I think it was Kyle Allen ended up getting back to him on like kind of this deep dig route over the middle of the field. And the ball, it was pretty good coverage by Everett, in my opinion, but the ball did hit his hands and it dropped to the ground. So it's kind of one of those things. I think that it would really surprise me, even though I don't think that Darnell is ever going to be this, 35, 40 catch guy that I think some people are envisioning. I do think he's going to have more than, 7 or 9 catches or whatever he had last year, just because, they're going to throw the ball more out of 12 personnel. That's also another thing I see, like, I think a misconception about Arthur Smith's offense is something that I was planning on maybe writing about in the next couple of days for the site. Is just, I think everyone, like, yes, it is a run heavy offense, but I think everyone's kind of grouping in like the heavy personnel in terms of like, okay, they're going to bring out 12 and 13 personnel to run the ball every time. And it's really not how it is. I think the big thing that I noticed was, and I wrote about this, But Darnell, when he was on the field last year, the Steelers threw the ball like 64% of the time. Last year at 13 personnel, I think Arthur Smith's like pass rate was like in the mid to high 60s. So they're gonna go from like last year. I felt like they were almost telegraphing whenever Darnell was on the field, especially like when Pat was healthy. When they would bring Darnell on the field, they would be like exclusively run heavy. I feel like that's a big tell. It's a big tendency for defensive coordinators to pick up on. Like, okay, this dude's in the game. We know they're going to try to run the ball. I feel like with Art, like they're getting into a lot of like 13 personnel and then shifting to empty. We saw them score again in the red zone out of that. So I think that's something too. I'm interested to see if the empty usage continues into the preseason and into the regular season because I like what I've seen so far. They also had one cool rep that I wanted to show you guys. I'm going to try to find an example of it from last season, but they ran a lot of screens. Most of them haven't been successful, but they had a really pretty one yesterday that they broke. They came out in a quads formation to with quads to the left side. So basically, quads like diamond is what it is, like literally four guys in a diamond. Jalen Warren was at the back of the bunch. He kind of came back towards Fields, who was by himself in the backfield. And if you guys know like what like orbit motion is, kind of those swing screens that everybody was using, especially like last year, they faked a swing screen to Jalen Warren back towards the bunch, and then had Fields like reverse out and throw a jailbreak to Pickens to get the ball in his hands. And the screen probably went for about like 10 or 15 yards or something like that, if I would have had to guess, if it was live tackling. But it was kind of just a cool way. I think anytime like this is, not necessarily a groundbreaking revolutionary take or anything like that, but anytime you can get the ball to George is a good thing. And I think that's my most positive takeaway that I could give you guys through the 3 days that I was there is that they are finding more creative ways to get him the football and in advantageous matchups. And that to me makes me really happy rather than just seeing him glued to the boundary running a bunch of back shoulder fades and stuff. Because I know that he can do that. That's great. And it's a good kind of card that you can pull out of your back pocket and say, hey, like we need a big play. Let's just throw a back shoulder at George. He's always going to be able to do that. But I think I've been really steadfast on this since George was at Georgia that I think he could do a lot more than like what teams have asked him to do up to this point. And I want to see if I'm right about that. So we'll see what that is. But I thought Pat had a couple nice catches underneath as well yesterday to kind of move the chains, but it wasn't as explosive of a day for the offense as it was during Friday Night Lights and just overall lighter practice in general. But just the vibe that I got there too, like in talking with some players and stuff and like media availability just off to the side and stuff is like everybody seems pretty excited about what the new offense is going to look like. Pretty excited about Art, the way that he's teaching things, the way that he's coaching them up, just the environment in the room, and then just like the quarterbacks too. Like I kind of asked a couple different players, like, hey, like what have you thought so far about Justin, about Russ, and there's the biggest takeaway was like there's a big difference between like this year and last year, and I think that's pretty encouraging. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out. When the pads come on, when the regular season starts and everything, but I think for me, it was enough to get me cautiously optimistic about things and where they're potentially headed. So appreciate you guys for all the support over the course of the week. We're going to probably treat this like a game week, to be honest. I'll probably have some sort of film room or video up maybe midweek or here in the next like 2 days, hopefully, if everything goes well. I'm going to take some time off today, spend some time with my kids. But after that, hopefully a video in the next 2 days, and then we'll do some type of preview for the preseason game on Friday. I don't know. We may go live. We may do a video early in the morning. Not 100% sure. And then I'll have a recap of that game as well. So I'm really excited. If you guys are looking for more content from me, of course, y'all can go over to SteelersNow.com. I got some takeaways in written form, really in-depth stuff over there. I've got some interviews, not just recap from my interview with Arthur Smith, but also I talked to Calvin Austin yesterday one-on-one for a little bit. So I'll have that up at some point today as well. You guys can be sure to check that out. So as always, I really appreciate your all support. Like I said, just make sure you like, subscribe, drop me a comment, all that good stuff. Get your gear at Homage, and I will check you guys next time. Peace and love.